I have a little note here. John reminds us of the true meaning of being lean. So without further ado, I hand it off to John from GitHub.
Thank you. Let's see. There, and yes, clicking works. All right, cool. First, I just wanted to say thank you to Cass. You've been so amazing this past week. I had 100 questions. She answered 100 emails, so thank you. Also, thank you to Nathan Gold for your coaching. I will be seeking your help if I survive this talk and decide to speak again someday. So, I'm Jonathan Hoyt, and I build product at GitHub. GitHub, if you don't know who we are, we help people collaborate around code, review and accept changes to code, and manage open source and private projects. Today, I want to tell you a story about my team at GitHub, how we spent months building an internal product and then killed it and failed. And then I'll share the biggest things that I learned from the experience. As I tell the story, you'll notice 3 slides have a number in the upper right corner. These are markers that I put in there. These are like key moments that we'll return to and look at after I tell the story. The story begins in late February and ends in late August. So I've been preparing for this talk for 9 months. Earlier this year, I was asked by a founder if I was interested in starting a new team at GitHub focused on building or helping our internal business teams. This was a really exciting moment for me. I had been at GitHub for just over a year. My success on another team was being recognized, and one of the founders was asking me to take on more responsibility. So in early March, I started talking with the finance team to get a better idea of their problems, needs, and desires. And in April, we started building the team up. I started looking for new people, and we hired Kyle Daigle to work with me. And together, we started breaking down all the problems and finding potential projects to work on. But 2 in particular stood out, and I'll share those with you now. Saloni, she was our first full-time hire to the finance team, was spending an enormous amount of time every month on our accounts receivable. It was obvious to us pretty quickly that some integration and automation work would go a long way. She was copying and pasting invoice data from internal applications into our accounting software and managing numerous spreadsheets to account for all of our revenue and get that recorded. Kyle pretty quickly jumped on this side of things. It got him excited working with the money coming into GitHub. Meanwhile, Allison, focused on our accounts payable, was frustrated with the amount of time it took her every month to do expense reporting, specifically for our company, our employees with company credit cards. She had to take all of their receipts and manually enter them herself and get all that done on her own. None of the responsibility was on their part, it was all on her. So together we began evaluating our options for expense reporting, and Expensify seemed like a good option. I really love their product, even if the UI is a bit frustrating at times. So we had a meeting with them. And after the meeting, Allison and I were pumped. Despite the lack of an API, which came up several times at the meeting, it appeared Expensify solved 90% of our problems, and we could deal without that last 10%. Kyle left the meeting with the impression that choosing them would actually cause more harm than good. After a brief discussion, Kyle and I decided we could build something designed purely around our needs that would be better. We knew that together we could build anything out there if it was focused purely on us. So in late April, I started building an app that took transaction data from American Express whenever somebody swiped a card. It then encouraged and facilitated the collection of receipts from the employees with company credit cards. It reconciled those receipts with the transactions. It classified them, and then it put them back into our accounting software. So almost everything was automated in the process. In the process, we also changed our policies, so a lot of the burden for actually getting your receipts in was on the employees instead of on Allison. In early July, Joshua Wayner joined our team, and by that point, Kyle had left his work helping the Saloni with accounts receivable to join us on the expense app. So at this point, mid to late July, we had 3 people working full time on reinventing expense reporting at GitHub. Now we're up to late August, and this is where the story picks up velocity and ends in failure. I was at a conference in Russia, and Kyle and Joshua were working hard to ship the first parts of the app by a September 1st deadline that we had set for ourselves. And on August 20th, they shipped those first parts. 2 days later, let me see if I missed a slide, there we go. 2 days later, another coworker published an internal idea that proposed a new way for forming and building teams at GitHub, focusing on the product we sell, setting clear success and failure benchmarks, and shortening milestones. We'll dive into Tim's idea more in a bit. Kyle read Tim's idea and started thinking hard about our work up to this point. He started a conversation with Tim, and the more they talked, the more he realized that we had made a lot of bad decisions and we were probably working on the wrong thing. Meanwhile, I'm out to dinner in Russia with friends, ignoring my email and chat pings, having a good time. And then after dinner, and an espresso, I walked back to my hotel reading Tim's idea on the way. As soon as I was in my hotel room, I had the laptop open, trying to catch up on all the conversations, just pages and pages of conversations around this. And as I'm reading it, I start to realize how badly we had failed. Fueled by the strongest espresso I've ever had in my life, I worked through the night talking to Tim and Kyle in chat and on Google Hangout, emailing with Joshua and Allison. And then the next day, August 23rd, Kyle, Joshua, and I, we just killed the app. We totally killed 4 months of work. We recommended the finance team use Expensify, and we started to figure out what was next for us, just pick up the pieces. So let's go back to Tim's idea. What was it about his idea that caused our team to declare months of work a failure? Tim and other leaders in the company had started to recognize a growing problem as we started new teams and hired new people. New teams were lacking that focus on product and the ship quickly and iterate attitude that had made GitHub successful up to this point. Without that focus on product, teams like mine were building things that actually distracted from GitHub rather than complementing our vision to build software better together. His idea also proposed a return to the scrappy startup way of life, thinking about salary costs, opportunity costs, the constraints that are often frustrating when we're starting a business, but ultimately the very things that guide us to making the right decisions. And finally, the idea encouraged setting clear benchmarks for success and failure and shortening the time between those benchmarks to just a few weeks. It recognized that we can reduce the costs of failure both emotionally and economically if we fail fast, and we can't fail fast unless we ship quickly and iterate. Where am I at? Oop, not there yet. Now I'm going to walk us through those markers, 3, 2, 1, and look at the decisions we made through the framework of Tim's idea. And sorry, I skipped a marker when I jumped through one slide. Maybe I'll just go back to it. There we go. Marker 3, our first milestone for the expense app was September 1st. That is more than 4 months after we started working on it, far too long for a milestone on an internal application. We also didn't set any benchmarks for failure, only success. So there's no way we could have known we failed. Let's go back to 2. Marker 2, I let one argument convince me that building our own expense reporting app was better than choosing an existing service that the finance team already knew how to use and that our company, for the most part, liked. I completely ignored the salary costs, the opportunity costs, the other things we could have been working on instead, and the long-term costs of maintaining an application. Marker 1. Now we're at the beginning of the story. This is the really painful part for me. Every mistake I made from February to August were mistakes I've made in the past. These were hard lessons I had already learned. Tim's idea wasn't new. It was just an outline of what had made GitHub successful up to that point. I let my notion of success, being asked to take on more responsibility, blind me to my past. I had a sense of, I've made it, and the rules don't apply to me anymore. And I threw everything from my 17-year career out the window and started bumbling around like an intern. Success forgets failure, and it wasn't just me. Other teams inside GitHub made the same mistakes, and the leaders of those teams talking to them have stories very similar to mine. So I have the opportunity now to give you one big takeaway, one lesson that you can hopefully apply in your life and business to avoid the mistakes we made. I want to encourage you to do the one thing that has always helped me avoid or lessen the costs of failure, the thing that I stopped doing when I started this new team. I stopped seeking mentorship. From February to August, I only had breakfast with a mentor one time, and I wasn't open and I wasn't honest because I wanted to seem confident and mature and like I deserved this responsibility that I'd been given. If I had been open and honest with Tim and other leaders in the company, they could have helped our team steer in the right direction a lot sooner. For most of my life, I have actively sought advice from mentors, people with experience and maturity that I lack, and I've been open to their feedback. We are never successful enough to stop seeking mentorship. My biggest failure in this whole story is right at the beginning when I had this sense of I've made it and I don't need anybody's help anymore. I don't know if that decision was conscious or not. It just happened. There are mentors in the audience right now that want to talk to you. All you have to do is ask. They have underneath their name badge, they have a little mentor thing. If there's a particular person outside of this conference that you want to reach out to, send them an email today. Can't hurt. And the next step is talking to them and being open and honest with them about the things you're working on and the struggles you're having. A simple breakfast or lunch date once or twice a month is a great start. If they're only available by email, take what you can get. Remember that the quality of their feedback is tied to how open and honest you are with them. Sugarcoating the truth or trying to impress isn't going to give them a clear enough picture to give you actionable advice. And finally, you have to be open to their feedback. Sometimes this is really hard, especially when they start pointing out mistakes or telling you better ways to do things. And here's the crucial moment when being mentored. You have to put your pride aside and completely open your heart and your mind to doing things different than the way you would have done them. Not all the advice I get from mentors is the right advice, but as long as I keep an open mind, I can use reason to filter that advice rather than emotion. So actively seek mentorship, be honest with your mentors, keep an open mind and a humble spirit. There is a happy ending to the story. I'm actively seeking mentorship from Tim, Chris, and the finance team. And with everyone's help, we've been able to pick quicker to ship projects with clear success and failure benchmarks, and we're actually seeing some success. This last week, Joshua and I shipped complete billing transaction records for GitHub.com that includes a bunch of metadata like the plan they're on, location, coupon, et cetera, and it makes financial reporting for Saloni much easier. Kyle left our team, joined another team a couple weeks ago. He had his first big ship. And Allison shipped Expensify to the company. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Questions about building companies on big budgets.
Yeah.
I actually love the note of setting your milestones appropriately.
Yeah. I think we lost sight not everybody in the company, but some of us smaller teams. And at GitHub, everybody works with a lot of autonomy. So we don't have managers saying, "Oh, do this and do that." So we have the freedom to make all the same mistakes all you founders are making every day.
While people think about their question, I'm gonna ask one really quick, but you hold that mic. You're next.
I get a mic. Can you talk about what you guys do now to set those benchmarks? How does a company set a benchmark for failure and success?
It's still up to the individual teams, but we're targeting just a few weeks between benchmarks. So the stuff I've been working on recently, I've set 2, 4, 6-week benchmarks, and success is shipping the thing to where the finance team can do the job that they need to do, and failure is not. And we've had 2 successes. We haven't had a failure since then. I imagine when we do have a failure, it's going to be we'll evaluate, do we need to add another 2 weeks to this because it's worth it, or are we on the wrong path? And we'll seek mentorship about that.
Hi.
Howdy.
About the point that you made about mentors.
Yeah.
For some time now, I've recognized that it's important to find mentorship. However, I haven't really discovered what it is that I would actually do with a mentor. I was wondering if you could speak to one of the breakfasts that you've had.
So during this whole project, I did not feel good about the decision we made to not use Expensify the first time. I have no idea what was going on in my head. I should have talked to somebody and just spit out what was in my head at the time that I couldn't process. I think an earlier speaker said that. You get stuck in a loop and you can't break out of it, and a mentor can help you break out of that loop. So that's, I tell my mentors everything on my mind now. I don't sugarcoat, I'm just honest. What am I struggling with personally? What do I see my team struggling with? Have they ever been in that situation? And even just not being so close to the wall, do they have a perspective that I don't have that would help?
To add to that is if you feel in this audience right now that you are not struggling with something, maybe you should jump a step farther.
Yeah.
Questions? I got one way back there.
How are we doing on time? There we go.
Hi, John. I'm a software developer, so I'm going to be asking a little bit more technical details on how you're going to go about creating milestones. Let's say if you go back with this project that you decided you're going to build in-house instead of using the Expensify.
Yeah.
So we're going to go and create a couple of milestones within 2 weeks. Now, Expensify takes many months
to
and
build.
years.
Yeah.
So we're going to go and we're going to create a couple of milestones 2 weeks, 4 weeks down the road.
Yep.
What kind of milestone can you actually create that you can
So
set?
I've thought about this a lot. Great question. I would have, to do it over, I would have spent 2 weeks working with one of our iOS developers we have a team app at GitHub. We have an app that we distribute to all of our employees that has like a Twitter stream and like just a bunch of things in it. I would have worked with them to add something that would let me take a picture and send in a receipt to Allison. Just that receipt, just that teeny little receipt collection part would have revolutionized what she was doing at the time. She was manually emailing every person asking for their receipts, and for the people who were chronically late, sending multiple emails trying to get them to turn in their receipts. So just giving them an easy way when they're out to dinner to take a picture of a receipt and it land in Allison's inbox, that would have been a huge win. I should have gone for the small step. They could have done it through email, but my coworkers are lazy. Like they wouldn't have wanted to type in her email address. They're already in the team app all the time, so if there was just a one click in the team app, I think I could have broken down the barrier just slightly.
Jonathan, question for you about setting the milestones. It sounds like you guys sometimes decide, yes, let's set milestones for ourselves. What if you have teammates that just feel like they don't want milestones imposed on them? How do you get people on board with the idea?
Again, it's up to the individual teams. We don't set hard deadlines on product that we ship to to the world, but I think as small teams, we're broken up into a lot of small teams. We have to set these deadlines internally, and I don't see any teams not doing it at this point. Like, everybody is accepting that, like, this is actually helpful. This is something that we can use to declare success or failure. Have we accomplished this goal in X number of weeks? It's still pretty loose. Like, GitHub doesn't follow many rules. We don't have much process.
Thank you, John.